Hi everyone, I'm Chesh from Cheshire Plays Games, and this video is sponsored by Wizards. Thank you very much, Wizards, for the commander decks for this series of videos. What we're going to be going through is a number of things. The first one is we want to identify what the commander decks are really good at and how we can change them up to make them work even better so that you can bring it to the table, play against people, and have a lot of fun. A few caveats here. The first one is that anything like fetch lands can't be done, because fetch lands are quite expensive, not everyone has access to them. So we're going to be trying to build around cards that you should be able to get your LGS pretty easily. Also, the one thing to remember is that even though there is a set commander that leads the deck, that is not actually the commander that will be leading this deck. Sometimes we'll actually be going and taking one of the secondary commanders and actually using those as a better option for the deck, such as the humans deck. So we'll get into that in just a second. We're going to talk about all of the resources that you can use to build your deck as well. First up, some resources. So the first one that you can look at for a good idea is EDHREC. So EDHREC.com is a great tool for you to have a look at other decks that are on the net. This will allow you to go through and have a look at maybe a couple of the commanders from the actual deck itself and get some great ideas on how you want to build the deck, such as this one for the human tribal deck. The other thing that you can do, of course, is have a look on Wizards' own site called Gatherer. From this, you'll actually be able to search up humans, for example. So your search criteria, you can fool around with it a bit and try and figure out what you might be missing from the deck that you perhaps want to have a look at, or what cards actually contain the text that relates around humans. Alright, now that we got that out of the way, and even though these decks out of the box are pretty good, let's go and have a look at what upgrades we can make to them so we can focus them a little bit more around what it seems like the deck wants to do. Let's go to that now. So today's deck is Ruthless Regiment. Now, looking through the commanders, looking through the cards, we can clearly see that this is some sort of human tribal deck. So what's next now that we've identified that it has a certain theme to it? Well, we need to figure out what the deck actually should be gearing towards. With humans, it's actually not that easy because the theme itself, based around humans, is extremely broad. So the first thing we need to do is we need to look at the face commander. So Kudrow. When Jarina comes into play, you get to create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token for each time you've cast a commander from the command zone this game. Also, in addition to that, other humans you control get +2/+0. So we know that every time that we cast Jarina, we get 1 and then 2 and then 3, etc. tokens that are 1/1 humans. Those humans, of course, will get +2/+0. So 3/1 humans for a small investment sounds fine, but you don't want to keep casting Jarina because Jarina will cost you 2 command attacks every time that you want to replay Jarina. So that's not the greatest when it comes to what we're looking for from our commander, because it's taxing our resources over and over and over, and with the humans deck, your casting cost on all of your spells and your creatures is probably going to be quite low. So next up we have a look at one of the backup commanders. We're looking at Kelsian the Plague, which has Vigilance and Haste, gets +1/+1 for each experience counter that we have, and Kelsian deals 1 damage to target creature you don't control. When that creature dies this turn, you get an experience counter. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that Kelsian has to actually kill that creature, but this also isn't fantastic for us because although this does have a place in certain decks, it certainly doesn't feel like it has a place in this deck. The third commander set that we need to look at is the partner commanders. This, of course, is Silvar and Trin. Trin reads at the beginning of your end step, if you attacked this turn, create a 1/1 white human soldier creature token. Now this actually goes a little bit better with the theme of what Jarina is actually trying to do by giving a pump to your humans. So you're probably going to be more enticed to actually attack your opponent. However, we have a look at Silvar, Devourer of the Free, and all of a sudden we notice that this 4/2 with Menace is a pretty good body. But it's a cat nightmare, not a human. But that's fine, because we can sacrifice a human to put a +1/+1 counter on Silvar, and it gains indestructible until the end of turn. So now we know that we have a sub-theme of pumping humans, a sub-theme of attacking, and of course sacrificing humans. So now we've identified a kind of Where we want to go with this deck is probably something towards the way of the Aristocrats build. It means that what we want to do is we want to have some more sacrifice outlets just in case, and then we want to have things that trigger when our creatures go to the discard pile, so that when they do die and go to the graveyard, we're going to be getting effects. When we have a look through the deck itself, we find Zaithrid Necromancer. When Zaithrid is in play, when a human creature you control dies, we get to create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So if we sacrifice one of our humans to, say, our Sylphar, we actually get a 2/2 zombie. This is actually incredibly helpful because it means that we're not really culling our ranks, we're culling our human ranks and creating zombies. Now, of course, that means that they're not going to get pumped by our other human pumping cards, but that's fine because that means that we're actually sacrificing bodies and still getting bodies back for those sacrificed. The other thing that we noticed looking through this deck is there is a copy of Zulaport Cutthroat. This little rogue is actually pretty cool for a human. Whenever Zulaport Cutthroat or another creature you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now, if you're sacrificing, let's say, 4 creatures at once, that means everyone at your table is going to take 4 damage and you're going to take 4 life. It's going to keep you in the game longer and also gives us a really good direction for an Aristocrats build of this deck. So, first things first, now that we know what's going on, we need to identify what to take out and why. First up is all 3 of the Impetuous Cycle. These cards, although good, don't really add enough to our deck for us to actually keep in here. Humble Defector, of course, human rogue, sounds good, except tap and draw 2 cards, target opponent gains control of Humble Defector, activate this ability only during your turn. Now, your opponents are probably just going to pass Humble Defector between them, and you'll never get it back. You'll never be able to get those cards again, so this is out. Bonder's Ornament, which taps for 1 mana of any colour and then has an ability that we really don't care for, which is 4 and tap, each player controls a permanent named Bonder's Ornament, draws a card. This is a 3 mana rock, doesn't really do enough for our deck at all. Yes, it creates a mana of any colour, but our casting cost is so low we probably don't really need to worry about the extra mana, so we can get rid of this. Crackling Doom is a fine card in a lot of decks, however it doesn't really bring our game plan forward, so we'll be cutting that from the deck as well. Captivating Crew is fine if you want to gain control of a creature your opponent controls and then sacrifice it to one of our outlets. Sounds like a solid play, but I don't think we need that in this particular deck at this point, so we're going to get rid of that. Fumiko the Low Blood. Look, human samurais are really cool, don't get me wrong, but playing this just so your creatures your opponents control attack each combat if able doesn't really matter that much to us, and the Bushido doesn't matter either, so that is out. Magus of the Wield. This was a very continuous cut because I do like drawing a whole bunch of cards, especially when it's 7. So, 1 red and 1 colourless, tap and sacrifice Magus. Each player discards their hand and draws 7 cards. This can be great disruption against combo decks. However, in this particular deck, it doesn't really offer enough value, so we're going to take that out. Disciple of Bolas. When Disciple enters the battlefield, sacrifice another creature. Only 1 creature, unfortunately, and you gain X life and draw X cards, where X is that creature's power. Considering that we're playing humans, and humans are notably quite weak without their pumps, we're going to take this out, because the amount of value that we get from this for the mana cost really isn't justified in this particular deck. Magus of the Disc is also a great human in some decks. However, this is a board wipe that destroys all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments. We don't want to destroy our board if we can handle it, so we're going to take this out. And of course, Temple of the False God, we're going to take this out and replace it with a much better land that we're going to talk about in a second from Ikoria, because the triomes are still actually quite affordable at this stage. I would suggest buying up a copy of each of the triome. Replacements for the deck. The first thing we're looking at is a Savai Triome. This is a Mountains Plains Swamp. Taps for 1 red, 1 white, or 1 black, and it enters the battlefield tapped, and it has cycling 3. This is a great late game land that you can just pitch to draw a card for 3 mana. In the early game, it provides 1 of each mana, and it comes into play tapped, which is fine. Looking towards what we want the deck to do, we know that we're playing humans, so before we get into the aristocrats side of things, we want to look at some really cool value humans that we can use against our opponent. The first one that we should pay attention to is Mentor of the Meek. Whenever another creature with a power of 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 1 colorless mana. If you do, draw a card. This is cheap and inexpensive. I have no idea why Wizards decided not to include this in the deck, but it is widely available thanks to M19's core set. Another one that I decided to throw in here just mainly because it is what we call an Anthem effect, because it gives +1/+1 to all of your other humans. This is General Kudrow of Drannith. Whenever General Kudrow of Drannith or another human enters the battlefield under your control, exile target card from an opponent's graveyard. Graveyard hate is seriously lacking in precons, so this is a welcome addition. You can also pay 2, sacrifice 2 humans, and then destroy target creature with a power of 4 or greater. That is pretty cool in a deck where we do eventually want to start sacrificing some creatures for our payoffs. Speaking of those payoffs, the first thing that we need to think about is how we're going to be dealing mass amounts of damage for creatures that we're going to sacrifice. The first one is Vindictive Vampire. Whenever another creature you control dies, Vindictive Vampire deals 1 damage to each opponent and you gain 1 life, just like Blood Artist. Then of course we have Cruel Celebrant, which is whenever another creature or planeswalker you control dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Then we have Sir Conrad the Grim. Whenever another creature dies, or a creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere other than the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad the Grim deals 1 damage to each opponent. You can also pay 1 colourless and 1 black. Each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. The next card up is Blood Artist. This is another vampire, not a human. I know, we're playing a lot of vampires, but it's aristocrats, so trust me, it's fine. Whenever Blood Artist or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Now, considering it's target player, it's not as good as the other ones, but it's still fairly good. The same with a Falconwrath Noble. Whenever Falconwrath Noble or another creature dies, target player loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Okay, so now that we've got that out of the way, we need some things that help us to sacrifice those creatures. The first one is one of my favourite Battle Bond cards. This, of course, is Krav the Unredeemed. Don't worry about the partner, we didn't include the partner in this deck. 1 black and sacrifice X creatures. Target player draws X cards and gains X life, and then put X +1/+1 cannons on Krav. Wow, is this ever a great card for an Aristocrats build. Priest of the Forgotten Gods. Tap and sacrifice 2 other creatures, of course this is a human. Any number of target players each lose 2 life and sacrifice a creature. You then add 2 black to your mana pool and draw a card. Now, considering the fact that we're going to have 3 other target players at our table, making each one of them sacrifice a creature and lose 2 life sounds like a pretty good deal. Speaking of pretty good deals, we have Ashnod's Altar to sacrifice. Sacrifice a creature to add 2 colors to your mana pool. That's it, that's all it does. Just helps us sacrifice creatures, generates mana. We have Yahenni the Undying Partisan. So Yahenni is whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1 counter on Yahenni. Sacrifice another creature, Yahenni gains Indestructible until the end of turn. Bontu the Glorified. Menace Indestructible. Bontu cannot attack or block unless a creature died under your control this turn. But for 1 black and 1 colourless, we can sacrifice another creature to scry 1. Each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. The last card that we're putting into this deck is of course Grave Pact. This is 3 black and 1 colourless. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature. So how does this deck win? Well, sacrificing creatures, dealing damage to the entire table, that's how this deck wins. Okay, well that's it. The deck list is down below in the description of this video. Thank you very much, Wizards, for the sealed product to be able to make this video. I hope that you've all enjoyed. Please watch Command of the Distancing here on YouTube. You'll actually see me play some of these $50 upgraded decks. Also remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and discuss with me down below what kind of changes you've made to these decks. How have you made these decks better like I have? And there you have it. The deck is upgraded. It's ready to go to be brought to the table and smash some face. Thank you very much, Wizards, for sponsoring this content, and I hope that you all enjoyed it. Please like, comment, subscribe. Don't forget to catch us every Sunday for Command of the Distancing, usually around 11 AM Australian Eastern Standard Time, where we have some great international guests coming up as well. Don't forget to check out my writing at PUREMTGO.com, where I do some freelance articles on Commander and sometimes on Brawl and Standard.